Prisoners have virtually no privacy in Singapore. Everything about their lives behind bars is tightly controlled by the Singapore Prison Service. Even their mail is read and vetted. But no one would have guessed that the prison was forwarding death row prisoners' letters without their consent, and to the prosecution, no less. This includes letters the prisoners wrote to their families, their lawyers, the court, and the president. In October this year, the Court of Appeal ruled that both the Singapore Prison Service and the Attorney General's chambers had acted unlawfully by forwarding death row prisoners' private correspondence without their permission, and the AGC by requesting and reading this private correspondence. To just get the court to declare that these officials' actions were unlawful took years, and the prisoners faced so many barriers in exposing the system. But sadly, this hard-won victory for the prisoners has meant very little. It all began in April 2020 when Dakshinamurthy Kattaya, a death row prisoner, discovered that his letters and that of another prisoner, Gobi Avedian, had gotten into the hands of the prosecution. He wrote to the court registry to complain that their correspondence had been forwarded without their consent. Both prisoners were representing themselves in court at the time. Dakshina discovered this practice when he saw documents that his and Gobi's family members had passed to them during a prison visit were included in an affidavit the prosecution submitted to the court as part of their ongoing case. He highlighted that this gave the AGC an undue advantage over them and sought an order preventing the continuation of this practice. The AGC's response was that correspondence between prisoners and their families was not confidential or privileged. They also denied that the SPS had copied any correspondence between prisoners and their lawyers and forwarded such letters to the AGC. This would later be proven to be untrue. In other words, the AGC lied. In their written judgment for this case, the Court of Appeal expressed concern over this practice, saying there is an expectation of confidentiality in a letter or document shared between private parties. The court also said, "We do not see how forwarding prisoners' correspondence to the AGC would be relevant to the good management and government of the prison." The court ruled that if the AGC had wished to obtain copies of letters belonging to the prisoner that were in the prison's possession, the proper procedure would have been to obtain the prisoner's consent or an order of court. What's worse, this was not an isolated incident. Months later, in a separate case, the AGC told the court that they had copies of letters another death row prisoner, Syed Suhail, had written to his uncle and his lawyer. These letters had been forwarded by the prison to the AGC in 2018, years before Dakshinamurthy's complaint. The AGC later admitted that they had requested Syed's letter in order to obtain evidence about whether Syed's criminal proceedings were an abuse of the court's process. Realizing that this practice had been going on for a while alarmed the prisoners. Lawyer M. Ravi and the prisoners started to pull at this thread and went to great lengths to expose that the prison had forwarded the letters of at least 13 death row prisoners to the AGC, and in some cases, the AGC had even requested that the prison do so. This practice had been going on for years. This isn't just a matter of violating death row prisoners' privacy. Disclosing private correspondence, including between prisoners and lawyers, could have serious implications for fair trial and due process. Such practices are also an abuse of authority. Think about it. Death row prisoners' lives are entirely at the mercy of prison officers. The prison system is opaque, and the prison has absolute authority over the conditions prisoners live in. These conditions can also change suddenly, without any explanation or accountability, like we've seen in recent months when the prison introduced additional restrictions to letters passed between family members and prisoners. The prisoners are powerless in challenging or changing these conditions. It is difficult for them to collect and transmit any evidence of wrongdoing, given that they don't have access to journalists and all their letters are screened. The prison can stop any correspondence from prisoners from reaching their intended audience by claiming that it is a security threat to the prison. Similarly, they can also obstruct any letters from reaching prisoners by stating the same concern. Prisoners on death row are among the most vulnerable populations in our country, and they struggle tremendously to have any abuse they suffer addressed. When there is no satisfactory check and balance on the prison's practices, neither the prisoners nor we, the public, can hold the authorities to account when prisoners are mistreated. The public have an expectation that authorities at least follow the rules they set for themselves. But in such a system, officers are essentially free to act with impunity, choosing which rules to follow and which ones to bend or break. The revelation that at least 13 prisoners' letters had been copied and forwarded to the AGC kicked off a years-long battle for accountability from the AGC and the prison. In the following videos in this series, we'll take you through this arduous journey. Look out for the episodes which will feature interviews with lawyer M. Ravi as well as the prisoners' family members.